Dr. Christy Ennis. Today it's all in the hips, even though you actually feel it in your back. We actually have several hip muscles that either attach into the spine itself, or if they aren't working right, cause the back muscles to work even harder. The first muscles we're going to talk about and work on are our hip flexor muscles, because this is what I see the most frequently causing a problem, and it happens to be one of my biggest problems, so we get to work on that for me today as well. I've said it before, and very unfortunately, sit happens. And sit happens a lot in this day and age. And when sit happens, our hip flexors get all tightened up. And that's a problem for the back because these muscles come actually above the hip and come up just about to the level of the belly button, and then they dive deep and attach right into the spine. So when they get tight, they're gonna pull and tug right on that spine. So we want to do a couple things to loosen them up. We wanna start with a release before the stretch to get those knots out first, and the stretching is more effective. And to really get into those hip flexors, if you find the top of that hip, right, the top of that hip bone, and just drop down a little bit, and then kind of dig in. Ooh, you'll find it. So you may need to do a little experiment. Instead of using my knuckles though, I'm gonna use the edge of the Derma Edge because it's much more comfortable for me. So I'm taking that edge right on that spot. My knees are bent up and breathing. Don't forget that part. You're gonna take that same leg and you're gonna bring it out to the side and back in. So it's gonna be like, bleh, not feel good, and then, okay, not so bad. And you're doing this until you can actually bring it out to the side and it doesn't feel as bad. Make sure that when you're pushing in on that pain scale from 0 to 10, you're only pushing in to about a 4. And then we have one other muscle to work on too. For the next part, you're gonna find that little bump on the front of the hip and drop your fingers down, maybe even over to the side a touch. Holy moly, this is my spot right here. So same thing, you can take your knuckle or you can take the edge of that Derma Edge, press in to that same extent as the last one. And this time now we're bending that knee up and straightening it back down. Hoo la la. I don't need to press nearly as hard, but the concept is still the same, and that you want to do this until it does feel a little less yucky. Now there is one more part to this, which really you have to be aware of, that it can be even more uncomfortable because it's right near the stomach. So make sure you haven't eaten if you do this. But if those don't get what you need, if you find your belly button and go over about 3 finger widths, that's usually right where that psoas dives deep. So you do have to press fairly deep, which is why I say don't eat before this. And then you're doing that same thing. And ooh, if you bend that knee and it feels more uncomfortable, you'll probably know you're on the right spot. And again, same concept here. My favorite way to stretch this muscle is in a kneeling position. I will show you a standing one as a modification in case you can't get down into kneeling too. But to help protect the knee a little bit, you can put a pillow right on the floor, and it's this leg that's back that's going to be the one stretching. Now it's actually a really small movement. So we're already starting in this position. You may already start to feel a stretch. To make that a little bit more intense, you're gonna think about doing a pelvic tuck. So in other words, you're flattening that curve in that lower part of the spine. Whew, and for me, I'm already stretching. Then you're gonna think about squeeze the butt on that left side. And now, if you still need more of a stretch, keeping all of that in place, you're gonna bring your body forward. So you don't wanna let go of that pelvic tilt, and you wanna try not to let go of that glute squeeze as well. So where I see people go wrong with this a lot of times is they do this, which might feel good, and it's not necessarily wrong, but now we're getting much more into the capsule than we actually are into the muscles themselves, which is really what we're trying to focus on here. So when you're doing this, hold for about 3 to 5 breaths. The other option, especially if you have been sitting for a while and haven't done anything to loosen those up, is actually do a little rock. So it's kind of glute squeeze, pelvic tilt, forward, and then let it go. Right? And you can do about 10 of these, and probably both sides will end up needing it. Next up is our gluteus medius, which is just fun to say. But that muscle actually attaches right at that hip crest on the body. So if I do that on myself, you'll see it's almost right here, and it can even come over to the sacrum a little bit or right above that hip. So you can tend to feel pain in the back along here or even down a little further along here. I'm going to show you how to release this bad boy in 2 different ways. First one is lying on your side. If it's uncomfortable to be propped up on your elbow, you can certainly just get a pillow and lie on down. But remember, right at the top of that hip crest, Again, you can take your knuckle, or like I said, this is much more comfortable for me. I'm going to use the edge of that Derma Edge. Trust me, you'll know exactly where that spot is. I don't even have to move and I can feel it. But from here, to help release that, we're using the muscle. So you're going to keep that top knee bent, but it's going to come forward. Ooh la la. And then you're going to extend it behind you. And I'm only laughing right now because I really feel this one. Again, another one that I need to do, right? See, I have a lot of things that need to be worked on too. But same concept here in that you want to do this until it feels a little bit better. And actually mine's already starting to loosen up. Notice I'm not grimacing as much or laughing as much either at that. And that's option number 1. Number 2 is actually one that you can do standing. If lying on your side isn't comfortable, another way to release this glute medius muscle is actually in standing. Taking right into that muscle again, just like we did on our side. This time you're actually going to take that leg and you're going to bring it out to the side and back in. So we're doing the same thing, but this time it's just in a standing position. All right, to stretch this out, you can lie on your back, either on the ground or on your bed, doesn't matter, whichever is more comfortable. Knee starts out bent and comes up towards you. I'm going to grab on the outside of that leg, bring it across towards the opposite shoulder, and then I'm actually going to go ahead and straighten that leg out. Now remember, this should not be painful, it should feel good. So if it's painful, either back off a little bit or wait to do the stretching. If this is also still too much, you can always take a strap around the leg to help you kind of lift and move it over. And for here, about 3 to 5 breaths. The last muscle, our piriformis muscle, is literally a pain in the butt because it attaches right at the sacrum, which is part of the spine, and goes over and attaches actually onto the greater trochanter of the hip. So it's getting the whole butt. Again, can cause pain into the back. If it's compressing the nerve, it actually can cause pain all the way down the leg too. Now we still want to release the piriformis, but we have to be a little bit more careful about this muscle than the other two because of what I said before, that sciatic nerve either runs on top of the muscle, in between, or underneath. So if it does happen to be in between or underneath and that muscle is tight, it's going to just smush that nerve. So if we really smush the muscle even more, it's going to cause more compression in that nerve. You'll know right away, but this is often why I don't have people just like lie on a tennis ball. It tends to be not so great. So with the Derma Edge, we're just going to apply a gentle pressure, even more gentle than what we did with the first 2 muscles. So usually kind of in the meat of the butt, sometimes over by the sacrum, sometimes by the hip. And again, just gently pushing here. So there's really not much discomfort. And then we're adding a top knee lift. So our feet are staying together and that top knee is lifting until it feels a little less tender. If you happen to have any symptoms that start to go down your leg or it feels worse, you most definitely want to stop this one. To stretch this out, you're going to lie down, and you again can either do this on the ground or on your bed. Just make sure, just like the other ones, that it doesn't actually hurt to stretch. If it does, back off for right now. So my favorite way to do this is cross above the knee, so I'm not resting directly on the knee, taking those hands around the opposite thigh, and then bringing that leg up. So remember, you want to feel a gentle pull, not a pain. If you don't feel anything doing this stretch, to make it a little bit more, you can actually swing your legs on over to the other side and you will definitely feel more of a stretch. If that is too much for you, sometimes I'll have people start by, again, kind of crossing that ankle above that thigh and then just very gently bringing that knee towards the opposite shoulder until a gentle stretch is felt. So it might just be a little bit of movement, and that's okay. If it's difficult, again, to move that leg around, you can take a strap again and put it underneath the leg to help you move it as well.